Hey there, how's it going? This is James Tripp with a video for James Tripp on YouTube. Even though the origin of this video has nothing to do with YouTube, I'm actually going to be responding to a request that came in on Instagram. Now, if you follow me on YouTube, you'll have noted that I have not been particularly active on here of late, and that is because I've been focusing on Instagram. Instagram's great, 90-second reels, this kind of thing. It gives a different format, but sometimes you want to give a longer answer, and this is one such instance. So I'm going to do this here. But if you are on Instagram and you're not following me there, you can find me as @theTrippnotist. So the Trippnotist, one word. I'd love for you to follow me on Instagram. I'm doing a lot more on there if you like my stuff. So let's get into this. We're looking at reality tunnels in hypnosis and in life. So the request comes in from Zhu Long. Zhu is saying, I found the concept of reality tunnels particularly intriguing after attending one of your personal alchemy courses in London. I think many could benefit from a brief lecture. So that's what we're going to do here. But I'm not a fan of the term lecture. It always seems so kind of like high and official and all of that. This is not a lecture at all. But I do want to share this concept of reality tunnels because it does relate to hypnosis and how hypnosis works, but it relates to our lives really significantly. And when you start to understand this concept of reality tunnels, then you have a lot more choice in how you relate to your experience in life. And it also frees you to see other people in different and more useful ways. Okay, so if these are things that are interesting to you, then let's dive in. So first and foremost, the term reality tunnel. I want to say this comes from Timothy Leary. Now, if you don't know who Timothy Leary is, he is a pioneer, perhaps even the pioneer of psychedelic research into psychedelics, LSD particularly. Back in the 1960s, he worked with Richard Alpert, who later on went through a spiritual transformation and is now known as Ram Dass, or was known as Ram Dass. I think he's passed away now. So back in the 60s, Richard Alpert and Timothy Leary, they were starting to look into LSD, this new thing, and what could be done with it. They were psychologists, but they ended up being very much counterculture leaders because they started to take these psychedelic experiments outside of more rigid formal context. And maybe that's because their rigid formality was being undone by psychedelics. So Timothy Leary, very interesting guy. I'm not going to get into his whole biography. I do recommend John Higgs' book, which is I Have America, I Have You Surrounded, I think it's called, which is a biography of Timothy Leary if you want to know more about Tim Leary. But Tim Leary came up with this idea of reality tunnels, okay? And he started to see through his work with psychedelics that each and every one of us, we were not living in reality as it was, but in reality as it was occurring to us, as our minds were making it up to be. And that our understandings of how things worked, our value sets, our conceptual frameworks, all of this stuff we pick up and collect as we're growing up, really shape how we see the world, really shape how we experience the world and how we experience ourselves. And what Leary was also pointing out is that each and every one of us occupies a different reality tunnel. We literally experience a different world. And this is a particularly useful thing to recognize because sometimes we look at other people and we go, what the heck are they doing? Why are they doing that? That doesn't make sense. Now, what we really mean is it doesn't make sense to me within my reality tunnel, from within my reality tunnel. But what it does do is make absolute sense from within their own. Okay? So we often think that other people are mad, bad, stupid, whatever, because we assume that we live in the world as it is, right? And if we think that we live in the world as it is and somebody else is doing something that doesn't make sense to us, we think there's something wrong with them. Now, this is actually an error on our own part. And this is why when I talk about reality tunnels here, and I'm going to talk about hypnosis in a minute, but in everyday life, understanding this is really important because you start to get, hang on a second, I don't live in the world as it is. I live in the world as it occurs to me, as my mind is making it up to be. Right? I live in the world filtered by my belief systems, my conceptual systems, my value systems, all of this kind of stuff. I actually experience the world differently. The world works by different rules in my reality than it does in somebody else's. Okay? So when we recognize this, we can look and we can see that other people, our behavior is going to look equally whack to them. okay? Or probably. There's more complexity to it than this, but at a base level, this is the useful thing. Now, another way of thinking about this, by the way, is Richard Carlson, who is famous mostly as the author of the book, self-help book, Don't Sweat the Small Stuff, which in my opinion is his least good book. If you want to check out Richard Carlson, I'd recommend something like Stop Thinking, Start Living. Or I can't think of the title of his other book. Not important right now because we're not talking about Richard Carlson. But he talks about this as the principle of separate realities. Okay, just recognizing that each and every human being occupies their own idiosyncratic reality, and therefore what they do and how they act makes absolute sense according to their model of the world, according to their reality tunnel, if you like. So I've used a few different terms there: model of the world, reality tunnel, principle of separate realities. We're talking about the same thing here. Okay, we're talking about the same thing here. Now, one of the reasons I like the metaphor reality tunnel is because if you think about a tunnel, when we're in the tunnel, what we don't see is everything that's outside of the tunnel. So when we're caught up in a particular way of seeing things or experiencing things, and we make that mistake of thinking how I see it is how it is and what I see is all there is, what we're missing is everything else that lies outside of our perceptual sets in that moment, everything else that lies outside of our comprehension, our pattern of attention, all of this kind of stuff. But we're sure we're seeing things exactly as they are, right? So the tunnel effect is an exclusionary thing. So when I'm caught in my way of seeing things, what I'm not seeing is everything that's outside of that tunnel. Now, somebody else, I might be going, what the heck is wrong with that person? But maybe they can see some stuff that I can't see because their perceptual sets are aligned differently in that time. So we can't be sure. It's not necessarily so smart to be quick to judge another person and judge ourselves as being aptly right. So in life, the way that this applies, number one, is it's useful sometimes to hang back when we're going to react, when we're so certain that somebody else is wrong or they're crazy or they're nuts or they got the wrong end of the stick. Sometimes it's worth hanging back and having a degree of self-skepticism. Hang on a second, I might not be completely correct about this. There might be something I'm not seeing here. Okay, before we dismiss somebody else as stupid, as an idiot, as whatever, maybe there's something I'm missing. So it can be very useful because it lowers our level of reactivity when we come to see this, when we come to recognize, I don't live in the world as it is. I live in it as it occurs to me, and there are always things I'm missing, all the time. This is healthy skepticism. Some people say, oh, but doesn't that lead to uncertainty? No, you don't need to live in a feeling of uncertainty. You can be absolutely certain that you don't know everything, and you can still act with certainty. But having that part that says, hang on a second here, I might be missing something, that's a very healthy thing to carry into life, I would suggest. Also, what tends to happen, I think, when people start to get this, is we can unhook from a lot of judgmentalism about other people because we see, hang on a second, I might not understand how this person's come to the conclusions they've come to. I might come to very different conclusions, but instead of just dismissing them as stupid or an idiot, we get to stop and go, what exactly is going on here? How have they come to this? They are a human being too. We have this common humanity and this common tendency to render up a world, live in it ourselves, and mistake it for the world as it is. And we all do it, right? We can look at other people and go, they're nuts, they're out of touch with reality, but we're all out of touch with reality in one way or another. So I really like this idea because it brings a lot of humility to life, and it slows down reactiveness, which a lot of the time is useful. Sometimes reacting is useful, but a lot of time it's useful to slow down reactiveness. And it helps to improve our ability to relate to other people, right? Because when we're able to fall out of the narrow limiting set of our own perceptions and look at things in a variety of different ways, we move from mistaking our ideas for facts to seeing them as a perspective on something greater. We get a greater level of cognitive flexibility within ourselves. So another dividend of this is we start to figure out there's always different ways of looking at things, and we can be curious about those, and we can usually find better ways than our default ways. Now, I want to see how this relates to hypnosis and hypnotism as well. Now, a lot of people will know that I used to operate under the moniker Hypnosis Without Trance. I have a book called Hypnosis Without Trance. And I still stand by that title of that book, because what I'm saying there is the weird experiences that people have as a result of hypnosis are nothing to do with being in a particular special state called trance. They are just direct modifications of people's perceptual sets when it comes to reality. It's a direct modification of how people are experiencing themselves in the moment. It's not about going into a special state and then giving suggestions. So some people will go, yeah, but, that's just semantics, whatever. I don't think it is. I think it's significant. But there's a sense in which what we're doing when we're doing hypnosis is we're not inducing a special state. We are engaging a person's cognitive faculties. We are engaging their reality-shaping faculties, their attentional systems, their perceptual systems, their conceptual systems through which they see things. We use our language and communication to basically change the shape of somebody's reality tunnel. When you change the shape of somebody's reality tunnel, you change their experience of things. This is how hypnosis works. Now, a lot of people think that beliefs, concepts are something that we intellectually apply to the world that doesn't actually change our experience of the world we apply it to, but that is not so. Literally, the concepts we bring to any given moment shape our experience of that moment. The quality of consciousness that we have in the moment is shaped by that stuff. So if you look at a hypnosis session, you look at a hypnotist working, they're inviting people to shift their attention in different ways. They're inviting people to look at things through different ideas. The way I talk about this, I talk about the use of language and communication to direct attention, lead cognition, and seed ideas for the purpose of leading someone into an altered experience of reality. We are shaping reality tunnels. That's what we're doing. Now, one last thing I'll say about this, and that's why, by the way, hypnosis is extremely good for helping people change their experience and the behaviors that unfold from their experience. Okay, so this is why it is such a powerful, I wouldn't say it's a tool, because hypnosis isn't a tool. It's an emergent phenomenon from the use of understandings and tools, communication tools, and understandings about how people work. Okay, so one last thing I want to say about reality tunnels is that it's a simplistic metaphor. So all metaphors break down at some point. So if you go, so what is a person's reality tunnel? The truth of the matter is a person can toggle, depending on what logical level you look at it at, you could say they toggle from one reality tunnel to another in any given moment of their lives. So in this moment, like say when I'm out walking the dog this morning, I'm walking the dog and I'm thinking various thoughts, and I'm in one kind of reality tunnel. If somebody suddenly, got up in my face and started having a go at me or something like that, I'd shift into a very different set of perceptual filters and concepts. A whole different set of concepts and beliefs would come online, and I would go into a different experience of reality as a result. Okay, now it's likely that there are common that both of those sort of separate sub-reality tunnels, they're going to sit within a greater reality tunnel, which shapes my overall sense of the world. So actually, in reality, these tunnels are sort of nested. You've got like a macro reality tunnel, and you've got these kind of micro reality tunnels inside of them. So that's more like the reality of how reality tunnels works. Okay. Now, last thing I'll say, because the question here was just to give a general overview of this. I want to say something about how when you step into different reality tunnels, you connect into different options and choices in your life. Now, I've experienced this greatly myself because I lived in a particular reality tunnel, or one of the elements of the reality tunnel that I lived in for a great many years was the idea that we human beings are pretty much as we are. We are what we are. A leopard cannot change its spots. That much of our character, our personality was deep in our DNA. This set up a particular relationship with myself and the world, and it very much limited what I thought was possible for me. Now, when I discovered NLP, I was introduced to a new reality tunnel, a new set of ideas that held within them an entirely different set of possibilities. Now, I had a choice at that moment. I could have bedded into my old reality tunnel and gone, this new stuff is nonsense. Or, and this is what I did instead, and I had a strong motivation to do it, I opened myself to the possibility that this different reality tunnel, this NLP reality tunnel, may have some value inside of it. Right. So I opened my mind and I stepped into it and I immersed myself in an entirely different way of looking at the world. Now, this wouldn't have completely replaced and bumped out my old reality tunnel. It would have modified my old reality tunnel. But as a result of my exposure to NLP, my reality tunnel shifted significantly and there were huge consequences for that. It made a big difference to my motivation systems, what I was willing to go for, what I was willing to do. It made a huge difference to the options and choices I saw around how I could manage my own ground of being, my own state. All of this stuff was of incredible value to me, which is why it really bakes my noodle when people arrogantly say, oh, NLP's been debunked. I'm like, yeah, but it only completely changed my life. So hooray for the debunked stuff, for the win. But I'm not talking about NLP here. I'm talking about reality tunnels. So it gave me everything that it gave me and nothing that it didn't. Now, that's true of any reality tunnel. It gives you everything that it gives you and nothing that it doesn't. Now, I was kind of deep in NLP for a while, and I got exposure to some other reality tunnels, say the kind of REBT and Stoic reality tunnel. That was incredibly useful, and it fitted well with the NLP stuff. But then when I encountered my coach, Steve Chandler, my mentor, Steve Chandler, who I worked with around about for a year, maybe 2012, 2013, or 2013, 2014. I can't quite remember. When I entered his world, I entered an entirely different reality tunnel again that contained within it entirely different ways of seeing and entirely different ways of being. And once again, I opened myself to that. I didn't stick clinging on to the cherished truths of my old reality tunnel and argue against this new one. I'm like, no, bring it on. I want this. I want this. I want to see where this takes me. Now, it was really interesting. The reason I mention this is because the contrast was so strong, the feel, the experience. So when I stepped from NLP into what I call Chandlerism, for want of a better expression, it was such a dramatic shift in what I saw, how I felt, how I experienced things. It was like I could taste it like a chef, like doing the Pepsi challenge or something like that. I could taste the difference. So that really was the reason I'm mentioning this, is because it really was a time when I recognized how powerful these reality tunnels are. Now, Robert Kegan, the developmental psychologist Robert Kegan, who wrote the book In Over Our Heads, and The Evolving Self was another book he wrote. Tough books to get into, not easy reads, but I love his work. He's talked about the idea of what he calls a language culture, and he's essentially talking about the same thing. I think it's more accurate to call it a conceptual culture rather than a language culture, but let's not split hairs over this. And he points out that in psychotherapy, one of the biggest, the most impactful things about psychotherapy is that the client enters a different language culture. They enter a different conceptual culture, or you could say here, a different reality tunnel. So Robert Kegan, in his view, one of the major benefits of therapy is simply stepping into a different way of thinking and seeing the world. Now, this really relates to hypnosis, by the way, because unlike most therapists go, well, they've got this conceptual framework. They think it really is true. Hypnotists, at least I hope, this is the way I look at hypnosis, but I guess there are other people that think about it differently. They understand a shaping experience with language communication. Most hypnotists will accept that what they call suggestion has got something to do with it. But what are we doing as hypnotists when we are suggesting? We are offering a different set of ideas and possibilities. Okay, and we are inviting the client to step into them and experience the world through them. That's what we're doing. So I think people that look at things like hypnosis and neurolinguistics, they're in a better position to really appreciate that when they're working with people to help open up new possibilities, new choices, that when people are doing this, we're in a better position to understand what it is that we're doing. We're working directly with somebody's reality tunnels. I also think it pays, by the way, as a hypnotist or a coach or anyone, to know that you come from a reality tunnel yourself. Right? Acknowledge that, be aware of it, I'm always saying to my clients, I make offers. I don't want to impose things on them because I want them to know I come from my biases. I come from my reality tunnel. Now, my reality tunnel, I've spent many, many years looking to evolve it, looking to refine it, looking to create an adaptive, flexible reality tunnel, so to speak, rather than the fixed, rigid one that's able to have me show up in an adaptive way in a variety of different contexts in life, right? So that work that I've done for myself, I think comes through for my clients. I don't insist they see things the way that I see things, but I know what I'm doing when I'm inviting them into different experiences of themselves, experiences of the world, different conceptual sets, and having them try that on, okay? And when they're open to this and they know they're looking for a higher level of adaptation to the world and to their lives or a better experience or whatever, the creative intelligence within them that does all the building of reality tunnels can take that material and they can use it to upgrade their own experience, their own reality tunnel in ways that work for them. It's not about me dictating to them the reality tunnel they should have, but it's helping them bust out beyond the walls of their existing reality tunnel and rebuild it in a way that is more functional, more adapted to what it is that they want to have in their lives. Okay, so hopefully this has been a useful little tour of reality tunnels. And if you have any questions about this, please do check out below. If you like this video, like the video. Please do like the video if you've got value from it, if you're here at the end. And please do also follow me on Instagram. I am at the Trippnotist there. Beyond that, I look forward to when we next connect.